Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We're about to start. My name is Paulo Almeida. I work here at the Research Provost Office, the Pró-Reitoria de Pesquisa, da USP. And it's a pleasure to have you all here for our Mooc and online teaching and learning workshop. Before we start on the actual activities, we have prepared 3 short presentations about what we're doing here in Brazil, our local context, and some data to figure out what's the current scenario and what should be the future scenario for Mooc building and online learning, digital learning in Brazil. And for our first presentation, I'd like to call to the stage the sponsor of this event and someone that we're very keen to start working with. And hope you enjoyed all the event, and if you'd like to talk to me about anything, I'll be around for the whole day. Pleasure to have you here, hope you enjoy it. So calling to the stage, Guilherme Silveira from Alura Kaelum. Round of applause for him, please.
Obrigado, pessoal. Perdão o sotaque. Vamos lá. So, my name is Guilherme Silveira. I work at Kaelum and Alura. I will talk a little bit about what we do and a little bit about teaching remotely, be it online or otherwise. So the first thing I want to say is a few of the... is that it's not working. Just one second. Eu acho que eu desliguei minha internet, aí ele perdeu a internet, aí não funciona mais nada, né? 1, 2, 3... Aham. Não sabe usar o computador, não funciona, né? So I work for Kaelum. That's a company I founded in 2004 with my brother. And we do presential training, brick and mortar, like the things that we do here at USP and other universities. So it's the traditional training. It's technology related, so it's software programming, design, web design, and so on. And we have 20 courses. It's not much, right? And then in 2014, 3 years ago, we started Alura, which is the online branch, and since then we have around 500 courses. Again, in this area of the IT, it can be either be like startup stuff, or software development, or design, or whatever similar stuff to that. Then we have our publishing business, which we started also in 2014, where we have more than 100 books in the last 3 years. Then we have something that is not related to software development, which is Music. We started in 2015, where we have over 90 courses on playing music, like keyboard or guitar and stuff like that, singing and so on. And finally, this year we started Alura Start with only 15 courses, and that's for youth and children, or something alike, or parents maybe. So they can teach software development, design, UX, animation, game programming, and this stuff to children and so on. Science also, and other stuff also. STEM and so on. So we have a lot of content. So the thing is, we have a lot of content in all those branches that we have in our companies. And how can we be able to teach so much? How can we be able to scale content creation? Because what we are doing is scaling content creation, right? And that's why you are here. You're here to scale what one person can do. And how can we scale content creation, keeping content quality and standardizing it, right? You don't want one course to look like something and another course to look like something completely different, because the student needs one experience. When you come to USP and you go through the classes in your degree, you expect some behavior from your teacher. Maybe you disagree with the behavior, but you expect that behavior. And it's the same thing with online training or remote training. You expect some standards, and you expect quality from it. So how can we scale with quality? And so the problem with online training, or one of the problems, of course, is that 50% of the trainings, online or presential trainings, like the ones we do here at USP, 50% of them are under the median. Does it make sense? It should make sense, right? Because it's just obvious. If you did statistics 1 or something like that, 50% is under the median. That's life. That's the definition. So around 50% depends on if there's someone with the same grade and so on. But it's 50% is under the median and 50% is above the median. That's the point, right? You have the median, 50% is under it. So you have the median. So I'm grading my teachers and I'm grading my courses, my 500 courses here. So I have grade 0 and grade 10 for my courses. So if the median is over there at the 5, I'm just guessing, I will define a bad course as being from 0 to 5. And I'll define a good course to be something from 5 to 10. Is that okay? Is that a 5 to 10 okay? Great for you? So median is 5 here. So if I have a normal distribution, that's the distribution. I didn't stretch it because it would skew the distribution here. But if you have a normal distribution, that's what I would expect from the grades from my courses, from my 500 courses, okay? And that's, again, that's just life. I cannot do anything about it. That's just how life works. And if I add a new teacher to my company, or if you add a new teacher to any other company or any other enterprise, it doesn't matter, this new teacher will be randomly selected, right? It's a random new teacher. If it's a random new teacher, it's most probable that he is or she is in the average. That's the most probable situation, right? It's just pick someone random, a new teacher, a new random teacher. He'll be there, she will be there. That's the random position. So I'll get a 5. And a 5, what do you think about a student which is graded 5 out of 10? What do you think about this student? You pass the student, right? But it's not the best student you have, right? You probably would like this student to have a better grade. It's the same thing here. If I have a new teacher and the new teacher is just 5, that's not good enough, right? If a random new teacher will give me a 5, that's not good enough for scaling new courses. So it's the same thing, a new teacher, 5 grades, the teacher that gets grade 5, it's not good enough. So what I need to do actually is, again, I cannot run away from this distribution. I'm expecting it to be a normal and so on. I cannot run away from it, and I cannot run away that 50% of my teachers and new teachers will be under the average, or under the median. I cannot run away from that. That's just math. But if it works, if I have a course that is good, the course that is here on the right side, I don't know if you can see the mouse. Oh, yeah, you can. So if I have a course that is really good, and I already teach this course, I can just bring it to the remote learning, to online or something like that. But if I get a bad course, if I get a bad one, if I get 50% of my courses are under the median, so if 50% of my courses, if I just translate 50% of my courses, they're going to be bad. That's what you expect. You had a few courses here when you had your degree, or if you're taking your degree. 50% of the courses that you took were under the median that you had. And if they just translate this course, they are going to be under the median of the expected course online. That's what you can expect from it. And so what I need to do is I cannot just translate courses. I cannot just move things because they will be under the median. What I need to do is something else. So I need to discover which ones are the best courses, and I think that's what we are doing here with Barbara, one of the best courses you have in the world right now. You have to discover which courses are those, and you need to learn from them. You need to learn what they did, how they do it, and you need to practice that. So what we need to do is, again, you cannot run away from the median, and you cannot run away that 50% of that distribution is on the left side of the median. You cannot run away from that. But what you can do is, if you learn from the good courses, you can move the median to 6. And if you keep doing that, what you can do is, you keep moving the median to whatever you want. Well, how you do that? You just drop the bad teachers and hire better ones, or you just practice and train new teachers. You need to do something in order to improve the median. That's what you need to do. It doesn't matter how, but you need to move the distribution to the right. Somehow, you need to move the distribution. And one way is to learn from the good teachers. And I think that's why you are here today. And actually, that's what we did, actually. We didn't start with 5, but that's what we did in order to scale to 500. And we have to remember that creating a course, how many of you here are teachers? So you have to remember that creating a course is different from giving classes. If you're giving a class one semester and the next year you're giving the same class, it's different from creating a new course. How many times have you created a course from scratch? that's one job. How many times have you teach the same course with the knowledge from the previous semesters and so on? That's a different skill set. Of course, there are some intersections, but it's different. So you have to practice creating courses, not only giving classes. And that's the challenge for teachers here, I think. So what we see here, at least in our point of view, is that when we get random teachers, we will get the median on 5, and that's a teacher who is starting, who is creating his or her first class or her first course in life. So that will be a median 5. But when we professionalize the teacher, we make the teacher act as a creator for many different courses. For example, we have teachers who have created 20, 50 different courses. When you do it 50 times, you get much better at it, right? It's just practice, repetition, and it's spaced because you need some time to do a course. So it's just repeating what you can do and improving what you're doing. If the teacher does it several times, the new courses are going to get better because he or she is learning from the previous mistakes. That's what we do when we give classes several times in several semesters, but that's not what we usually do because we don't create different courses every semester. That's not what we usually do. So my point here is that we should be more focused on creating more content, creating more content as teachers, if we see ourselves as teachers, as content creators. So the second thing I want to tackle here and show is how to keep, so that's one of the challenges that I want to talk is scaling the content, is about the content quality. And that's something that I think we are focused here on Barbara's talk and on the workshop. And the second thing is related to how to keep the students. If you think about the students today, and the students is watching this online training or this online course, you have competitors all over the world, right? It doesn't matter if the student is here, is watching some course from IME, the competitors are from all over the world because the students are in a web browser. So if the students are watching a course from USP, can anyone name any other competitor? Just any Unicamp. Unicamp is a competitor, but you can name a lot of universities. You can name Coursera, EDX, and any other providers. But those are not just, and actually they are not the biggest competitors from online training. The biggest competitors from online training is Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and everything else that distracts you from what you want to do. And those are the distractors from your students. They are not moving away, closing your course because they are going to Unicamp. They are not closing your course because they are going to EDX or whatever. They are closing your course because they received a message in their cell phone and they are now focused on their talk on their cell phone, or because Facebook is just on the next tab and what you just started talking about is not nice, it's not interesting, it's not funny, it's not whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't connect to the student. And then you lost the student and you didn't lose for the competitor that you think is your competitor. You're losing them for these guys. So that's what we need to focus in our point of view. We need to be entertaining enough, unfortunately. I know we as teachers, we don't think that, but we need to be entertaining enough so that our students don't run away for those platforms. I know some of the point of view in some universities such as USP, and I've attended USP also, and I think some of the point of views is that's the student's responsibility, not the teacher's responsibility. I disagree with that. It's just that I disagree. I think it's our responsibility to teach the student how to focus on what he or she wants, but he or she doesn't know how to focus yet. I think that's our responsibility. And of course, other courses in the same platform as yours are also competitors. If you do a bad course on machine learning and there's another course on machine learning on the same platform, you probably will lose your student to the same course, to the other course in the same platform. So, and you have to think also that a bad course, if we go back to the content quality, right? The bad course is stealing the students the chance to learn, because you're taking the student's time, which is the most valuable thing, is the student's time, and he or she will probably get to hate that subject because you just presented it in a bad manner, or you just didn't involve the student enough that he or she might be able to repeal the idea of that subject and will never get back to that subject again. So if you can imagine, you did something in your degrees, and you might have had one teacher, I don't know, in the 5th grade or something, that said to you, that told you, okay, you're really great in this area, you can try this area, but you might have had also other teachers who said, okay, you're a failure in this area, you have nothing to do with this, you're not good at this, never try this. And you actually tried and it worked out for you, or in the end. So it's a bad course and a bad teacher, it's taking away really a lot from the students. So we have to think about quality and how to keep the students' attention. So I want to finish with just one example. So I want to compare those two approaches. It's something that most probably everyone have seen in their lives. It's just the notation probably might not be the same you have seen before. Do you know what this is? It's Pythagoras, right? It's A ao quadrado igual a B ao quadrado mais C ao quadrado. I don't know how to say this in English. So, A ao quadrado igual a B ao quadrado mais C ao quadrado é Pitágoras, tudo bem? So, B is 4, C is 3, and then we learn 3, 4, 5 is the triangle that we all know, or we should remember, and A is 5. So that's Pythagoras. That's one way of practicing Pythagoras, and it's really amazing. I don't know who finds this amazing. I don't want to, now it's already biased, I'm sorry. But that's the typical way that we practice Pythagoras, right? You just give the equation, and you put the numbers, and that's it, and you have Pythagoras, and yes, that's it, let's go to the next subject in math. And this is another approach. This approach will show, sorry about the face on the right, I had to take a screenshot. So that's Pythagoras, right? And that's how you cook a steak, or if you don't eat meat, that's a tofu, you just think it's tofu or whatever. And that's Pythagoras again. Okay, that's exactly what happens in real life. That's the heat source, that's the meat, and the heat will be transferred through air to over there, and that's why that point over there in that triangle, rectangle, I don't know how to say that in English, that's the point that is going to be burned before the other points, right? And that other point to the right side will take longer for the heat to reach that area, so it won't get as burnt as that point. So what we can do is to teach Pythagoras in just a real context, in real life context, right? We don't need to teach things just abstract. Of course, if you're going to be a pure math student and so on, at some point in your life, you're going to learn how to love this, and there's no problem with that. But if you're not going to be a pure math student and you think that math is important, there might be other ways to teach this content. So, and to keep the attention of the students. I don't know, I guess most of the students don't like this stuff. I don't know from your experience. From my experience, most of the students don't like this stuff. But there's a random selection of students who like food. They like to eat, they like meat, they like other stuff. And we can find those interests and connect with the students with those interests. And it's not that hard, it's something that you do every day. I'm taking math as an example because I'm a math graduate. I'm not, because I didn't graduate. But, okay, so use techniques to retain the students' attention and empolgation. Essa foi ótima, hein? Empolgação of your students. And so if you want to change the education, I think there's a way in online and just remote training and remote learning. And those two bases are really important for that. And of course, since we are the sponsors, if you want to teach with us in our platform, we have open positions. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guilherme, for your lecture and for sponsoring the event. We hope we have more opportunities to interact in the future. And just switch computers now. So to tell us a little bit about metrics and Brazilian data, we have the huge pleasure as well to have here Tulia Bars, and maybe it would be interesting for you to introduce yourself a bit too and tell everyone about your background. Huge pleasure to have you here.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Turi Bars, and I'd like to tell you a little story here today, before I introduce myself. So, first, there's a problem in Brazilian education. Each minute, 3 Brazilians drop out of school, from basic school to high school. And I'm not even counting college dropouts. So that happens due to a variety of reasons. Yeah. That happens due to a variety of reasons. And it gets even harder when you get into college. So people who hadn't had the opportunity to get a good education in basic school and high school, they have difficulties to get a good college education. And even when they get in, they have difficulties on completing the degree. Especially in Brazil, especially in STEM-related areas, in science-related areas, there's a huge increase in college dropouts in the last 2 years. And I know that because I'm one of them. And so I'd like to give you guys an overview of the state of online education in Brazil, which is a way of trying to solve this problem, to solve this gap in education, okay? To keep it brief, we're going to focus on Coursera and Udacity, okay, on data collected by the guys at Epidemic, which is the company I founded. I will tell you guys later. So the first thing we collected was the demographics behind the people who are attending classes both in Coursera and Udacity here in Brazil. So, and compare that to the baseline in the population, okay? So, this is not very impressive, but it's very interesting to note that Udacity has some advantage in younger students, so they have like sorry guys, they have okay, eles têm número maior de estudantes dentro de idades mais novas. They have a great number of students of younger ages, okay? And Coursera has like a skill distribution towards older students, okay? So let's try to understand that a little bit more. So now looking at educational level of those students, things are starting to get a little bit more interesting. It's very easy to see that people with only high school degree, people such as me, Coursera can't reach them very successfully, and Udacity can. Coursera in Brazil has a huge success on postgraduate students. So in reality, what is happening here is that the biggest platform for online courses in Brazil, for university-like courses in Brazil, is Coursera, which is educating the already educated. And that's somewhat of a problem, okay? And so to dive a little deep in Coursera data, let's look at this statement. So Coursera has 7 times more postgraduate users, students, than the population, which is somewhat assustador, frightening, okay? Sorry. And 19 times more English speakers than the population, even considering courses which are translated to Portuguese, that have Portuguese subtitles, okay? Besides that, 14% of all those people who takes courses in Coursera here in Brazil are not native Portuguese speakers. They take the courses in English because they come from other places. They are like doing intercambio, exchange. They are exchange students taking courses here in Brazil, but they are from especially English-speaking countries. And this for me is very serious, only 6% of Coursera's students have only high school, which is 80% less than the population. Coursera is reaching more people who are already educated, which is something we have to pay some attention. In the other side, Udacity, which is more career-focused and focused on IT-related courses. Actually, Coursera here in Brazil has a great advantage in life sciences, followed by medical sciences, and sorry, I forgot the third one, but STEM-related areas, math, IT, programming, data science, statistics, and so on. It's the ninth position. So it's very serious too. So Udacity has only 3% more postgraduate students. That's still not a good number, but it's better than Coursera's now. Do you guys remember that Coursera has 19 times more English speakers than the population baseline? So Udacity has only 3.5 times. So the strategy they are using is more capable of reaching people who wouldn't be able to take courses in other languages. 90% of the students are native Portuguese speakers, and they have 3.3 times more users in proportion interested in STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. Then the baseline of the population. And so that's something that's very, very interesting to think about and try to understand a little bit why this is happening. So we at the Epidemic try to look and understand a little bit of what was happening and the why. So we arrived at five conclusions. Some of them are pretty obvious, but having the data to prove something that our intuition says, it's very, very useful. So we actually focused on this study on data science related courses. Okay, so that's why it's focused on data science over that. So the first thing is language barriers. Okay, the language barriers in courses, not only having courses translated and with Portuguese subtitles is not enough. We have to create a perception of that the course is reachable to people who are not familiar with English, they are not fluent, and people like me. And so another thing is a very bad reputation of online education. So we have a lot of courses, online courses in Brazil, especially specializations and master's degree from some institutions which are of dubious quality. Okay, thank you. Dubious quality. So that creates a perception in the major population that courses offered through the online medium are they're not sound. They're not really good. Okay. On the other side, we have, which is quite a paradox, that when people see courses offered from like universities such as Stanford and Georgia Tech and courses offered with a partnership with Google and so on Coursera and Udacity, it creates a perception of extreme difficulty, of extreme hardship to go through those courses. So again, it creates unreal distance from local students, from people who aren't already educated, aren't already having contact with education and college degree and advanced degrees and so on. And the other two the other two factors, lack of understanding of data science industry in Brazil is more subject related to data science, but the final one is lack of Coursera's brand awareness and engagement in Portuguese. So because we are focusing this study on Coursera, okay. So all of that contributes for this platform not having the ability to reach people who would most benefit from it. And I actually say that from a personal point of view, because as I said, I dropped out of college and I started taking courses on Coursera, and it enabled me to research a project with NASA, with Stanford University. I started a career in data science, using the skills and courses and the certificates which I obtained through Coursera and Udacity, which enabled me to provide for my family, which come from a poor background, and provide for my mom during her treatment and so on. Last year, I quitted my job at Sony to open my company, Epidemic. We use AI and big data, from which I learned in Coursera, in online education, to understand how people engage, how people interact with content, with brands and ideas through the online medium. And we are growing so fast. We are now starting to work with education, to online education, and try to contribute to make this more close to people who most need it. So we must work together to make this story that I told you a more common one, so that we can reach people who come from less favored socioeconomic backgrounds. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tulio, so much. And if anyone wants to ask him additional information, he's a great source about Brazilian market data. You can look him up at the event. I think you're going to be here for the whole day, right? Great. Thank you so much. And for a final short presentation before we start the main part of the workshop, talking to us a bit about exactly the future of education, Atila Marino, a great partner of ours, and thank you to have you here as well.
Good morning. Nice meeting you. I'm Atila. I was a biology graduate student from here, a virology postgrad student, postdoctorate here. Started started a YouTube channel with great partners, and from 2015 to nowadays, I've mostly been a science communicator. And due to this activity, we started a partnership with Pró-Reitoria de Pesquisa since last year, producing online courses. So nowadays I work as the instructional designer at Pró-Reitoria de Pesquisa, helping them to find the courses that we have in Coursera, plan the courses, and how we're going to produce them. So I'm here today just to tell you a little bit about the future of education, but I didn't want to do those speculative presentations, which are great for inspiring, talking about how education is going to be in 20, 25 years or something like this. What I'm trying to do today is not futurology, but I would call it presentology, like bringing nowadays technology to online courses. So no future speculation, just let's see if we have the technologies of today being used for education. So for example, I could say that in 10 or 25 years, we're going to have Brazilians that learn international level data science and use those talents to start their own companies. I could say this in the future. We have a case here today that is Tulio. So it's not that far in the future. It's just a little bit uncommon. And that's what I'm trying to present here today. So if I start to say something that is too much speculative, stop me, please. I'm just trying to bring some technologies to education for now. Okay. So do you remember those technologies? You know, like when Nokia was the largest cell phone company 10 years ago. This is the Forbes cover of the November of 2007 edition. And do you remember Blockbuster? Remember when you had to go to move rental places and you had to actually walk there and rent something to watch it? Do you still have where to watch those movies in your home? Like I just found out yesterday that I have no DVD or Bluetooth player at home, or Blu-ray player at home anymore, and I don't know how long it's been. So this is what we're going to face everywhere, right? We are comfortable right now because we are at a big university that has 200 years of history, or almost so. We have this big name. Everyone knows what USP is, what the university represents in Brazil and everything. But those guys were this size some point in time. And this is the reference we have today. So just to remind us that recognition and name and reputation, they last, but they depend on lots more than just themselves, right? So what's happening today and what took Nokia out, what took Blockbuster out, are platforms like Apple, like Google, like Facebook, like Netflix. And what platforms do is that they can grow way faster than traditional companies. Like if you want to start a meat-producing company, you either have to have very good friends or a very long time to get big, because you depend on physical products. Well, platforms don't depend on it. If you look at Uber, they are the largest taxi company in the world right now, and they have no cars, right? They don't depend on cars. People bring their cars to them. We have Airbnb, that is the largest accommodation provider in the world. They own no hotel. They don't have a single room that you can rent. People bring the content to them, right? You have Alibaba. I don't know if people here are used to Alibaba, but we have their Brazilian shipping companies like AliExpress and GeoExtreme. So you probably know those, and you probably know the Curitiba processing center of the Correios. So they all go through there, through Alibaba. It's one of the most valuable retailers in the world, and they own no product. They only sell through their platform. So all these companies, they have less than 10 years, and they are already the largest ones. We probably kind of maybe are going to see something like this happening in education. And this is not the future, this is happening at the moment. So what about education, right? What are the chances of the education going through a platform change like this? So what are, I'm quoting here Platform Revolution, just to give you a quick description of what are the most probable industries to go through a change like this with a platform just taking everything and becoming the biggest, the largest one. So industries that are information intensive, like media and telecom, they are subject to very quick takeovers from a platform. Industries that have non-scalable gatekeepers, like publishing editors. You have those gatekeepers that you depend on them to have the content produced or published, and the platforms provide it faster, and you dislocate the gatekeeper to the consumer, right? So in traditional publishing, my editor has to accept my manuscript. In Amazon, I can publish my book and you guys choose to read it or not. So I'm taking the gatekeeper out. Industries that are highly fragmented, so that you have many companies providing service, then you have a single one that provides services better than everyone else because it's a single company, like taxis and hotels. And industries that depend and rely on information asymmetry, like prices, like the value of insurance, like the cost of everything. It's what Alibaba does. So you have the prices through the whole China. Alibaba comes and says, no, I'll give a single price of this product. It's going to be the lowest one. Good luck for everyone else. These are the kinds of industries that are disrupted by platforms. So what about education? And just giving here, guys, the Portuguese name of the book. It's being translated here. So education is totally information intensive. It's information dependent, actually, right? It's our bread and butter. We depend on information for education. So it's ripe. Non-scalable gatekeepers, yes. Every time you try to enter a university, a school, a private school, you have people choosing whether you can learn it or not. That could be skipped. It's highly fragmented. So I would say in Brazil, for K-12 education, for escola de ensino médio e fundamental, it's totally fragmented. For colleges and universities, it used to be until Anhanguera, no, Grupo Croton took over in 2015. So nowadays, we have one huge company in Brazil that is the Grupo Croton that owns, I would say, more than 50% of the universities here. So it used to be fragmented, not anymore, not going to last for some time. And we depend on information asymmetries all the time. Most of the people don't know how to judge how good it is a university, right? When you look at advertisements on TV, you won't see a single university saying we have the best courses. You're going to see them saying we are close to subways, we are cheap, we are fast. So they're not actually talking about the quality of the content there, but how accessible it is, right? So all of this makes education really, really on the spot for a platform change. What holds education from being taken over by platforms is mostly regulation, and the fact that most of the times the consumer is not the students, but their parents, their teachers, and whoever is in the board of the school, right? If you let the students choose, they probably would choose different systems of education, but it's not them that are choosing. So these are some of the characteristics that hold platforms from entering education at the moment. We don't know how long they're going to last, because these are huge forces here, right? So what probably is going to happen to education once platforms take over? Let's just transpose some of the technologies from platforms to education and see the role they have. For example, do you remember when you had to buy a whole album to listen to one song? Do you remember? You liked one song in the radio, you had to buy the disc and listen to both sides for one song. Then iTunes comes over and you can buy one song, right? Like Outkast here, they have their song, Hey Ya, you can see the popularity there, and nothing they did later is as popular as it is. So in the CD era, in the compact disc era, no disco de vinil, they would probably sell a lot more of albums because people wanted this song. Nowadays, you can buy only that song for $1 something, and that's it, right? This is what we have at college right now. You have to come physically to the university. You have to live here sometimes. If you come from other states, you have to come to live in the university. You have to do everything here for one course or one lecture, one class. You cannot unbundle it. You have to buy the whole package, the whole experience for some moments that you want there. Not anymore, right? I can go to Coursera at the moment and choose a certificate, a professional certificate, a master's in something, or do only one course without having to go through the whole process, right? At USP at the moment, if you want to have a certification from one course here, you have to be enrolled in one of the graduate courses, the undergrad courses. You have to go through vestibular to have access to the lecture. Not anymore. You can go straight to it. Let's have sampling. So one of the biggest problems with online course is the dropout rates. So even if you have a very, very good course, you have many students that start the course and abandon it, or don't do all the exercises, don't go through the whole course. So depending on the platform, you can have some dropout rates, a very big dropout rate actually. You can have completion rates, that is people finishing the course, that are below 20%. And this is pretty usual, having less than 20% of your students leaving your course because of any reasons. If we look at the traditional point of view, we feel these are dropout students that we should be keeping in the platform, that we should be keeping in the course. But this is our traditional view, right? This is coming from someone that was lecturing 1-hour classes where the students could go nowhere but watch me. Nowadays, they can go anywhere. We have the problem of the other tab, WhatsApp, Facebook, and everything else. But this is not actually dropouts if you think that the student now is sampling what he wants to do. Like, if I go to a bookstore and grab a book, unless I'm browsing, I probably went there because of that book. I'm buying it and I leave. When I go to Amazon, I can just browse books, take a look inside and see what the book offers, and then later decide if I want to buy it. What we have on online courses right now is exactly the same. This dropout ratio actually is people coming, watching your course and saying, yeah, I want to do this, or no, this is not the area I want. What we have in university is that you have to go through vestibular and years of study to choose a career. And if you find the wrong career, good luck. That's what you have. And you probably will have to take years and years doing that because you already have invested so much time to begin it that you can't drop out. Imagine if you could. You start a biology course, you go to a calculum course, and you say, you probably would drop out if you could. That's what we do online, right? There are some disadvantages on it. People probably should be doing some of these courses they don't find good. I'm not going to, if you have a big dropout rate in your course, it may not be the case of the students, but of the course. But having some dropout rate is actually just the market, people choosing what they want and having the freedom now of clicking and, okay, I want it or not. We can sample it now. So imagine, do you know what happens with Game of Thrones or mostly any series at the moment? You just can't wait, right? They used to having the series showing in one country, then later another one, then later another one. You would have months or years for the series to be translated and shown in your country. Not nowadays, right? Beginning with Lost, I would say, once the course was presented in Australia, people from all around the world would download it through internet and watch it before it showed up in their TV. Even people that had actually paid for the series couldn't wait for it to be shown presented in their country, so they would download it faster from anywhere else in the world. We have this today, right? But we don't have it in universities. For me to have a course on something that is new, I have to have a professor that went to that university, to that science center, learned it, came back, prestou concurso, I have no idea of how to translate it, was approved here, and now is lecturing here. So we have a 5 to 10 years gap between someone learning a new ability and bringing it to us, while I can learn it from the source. So, for example, Galaxy is a bioinformatics analysis tool for DNA analysis. It was created, I think, in 2010, 2011, something like it, but the program creator started an online course in Coursera. So now I don't have to wait for a professor here to go there, learn the tools, come here, create a course, teach it to me. I can just go to Coursera, get the course from the guy that made the program, and learn it right away. So there's no delay anymore of knowing something. And there is no reason to wait for a Portuguese version of the course here that is going to be outdated when it starts if I can go to the source there. Imagine it for every course. Optimize physical space. Did someone here went to the bank this week? Do you remember when you had to do it every month to solve everything? To transfer money, to pay boleto, something particularly ours, to do anything. Nowadays, unless you have some banks that really don't make this easy, you can do most of it by the cell phone. And you only go to the bank when you have to do something that you have to be physically present there. But most of the time you don't. So you use the bank space for way less people nowadays, because most of the people are solving the problems online. We could kind of do the same here. Like, why does everyone have to come to the university and watch a course when you could use our physical space here to have things like, in a biology course, in my situation, a microscopy lesson, where I can't do it remotely. So why don't I have the traditional classes at home using only my space, while the university space is used specifically for what the university does better, that is teaching us hands-on to what we have. So instead of having 10 classrooms with rows that are not going to be used most of the time, I can have all those rooms full of microscopes, equipment, animals, plants, and everything else that I need to use hands-on, and I will come only for what's most physically valuable to do here. Why not doing the opposite? We can begin a series at any time and binge watch it. You know, when it's Friday, you get home, then you wake up, it's Monday, you don't know what you did the whole weekend, but you know the whole series. You know, when you começa a assistir a série na sexta-feira, acorda segunda e nem sabe onde você está. Why can't we have the same in courses? If I failed a math course this year, why do I have to wait until the next year to do it again? And what else is going to be delayed in my graduation because of one single course? Why can't I just begin in the beginning and watch it the whole time, like I do with my series? Like Rick and Morty, it went on air 4 years ago. I missed the opportunity there, but I can watch it right now. Why can't I do the same with my courses? Why do I have to wait another year to do a course again? And if I have the ability, the capacity to do my course in 1 month, not 6 months, why do I have to wait 6 months coming to the university to do that course? Why do I have to do this in the actual time? I can watch the whole series in 1 weekend. Why couldn't I do the same with a course that I already know what's being taught there? Why do I have to do it 1 year course? Why can't I do it in my speed? Cross-platform content, right? I can watch the same series in whatever platform I subscribe to. I would want to have this for any series. Why can't I do the same with a course? If I'm studying at, I don't know, Federal Rural da esquina do Acre, why can't I have a USP course there? Why can't I have the same high-level course being taught at every state and federal university online? Right? I don't want to watch the Brazilian version of Rick and Morty. I want to watch their version, translated to Portuguese, but that's it, in my platform. Why can't I have the same with courses? Why can't I have like graduate level courses of the same level coming from the best university to every other university in Brazil, if they are not competitors, right? But then we come to the problem. Aren't MOOCs a fad? Aren't they going to disappear? Aren't they doing bad? Well, the only point I wanted to give on this is a nice experiment from the 1940s where the US Army was trying to find the most effective way to teach thousands of students, the soldiers, at the same time. So they tried every single method they could to see what students learned better. So they actually did the experiment, you know, that we speculative talk about all the time. So they tried to present how to read a micrometer using a movie. So people would sit and watch a movie being presented. They tried to teach it using a classroom, like a professor talking and teaching a teacher, talking how to use a micrometer, and text and figures. So people would receive nowadays a PDF with instructions, and they had to read it and do it manually to learn how to do it. What they found is there is no difference between the three methods. So for whoever questions, oh, but online learning, is it different from physical learning? Actually, you can go to that website. They are comparing almost 100 years of comparisons, and there's, as the name says, no significant difference between methods. No significant difference. What actually makes the difference in teaching and learning is the student-professor or student-teacher ratio. So the more teachers we have, for the fewer students, the more students learn. especially, and we are always leaving them out, the students that have low attaining, right? So the lowest attaining students are the ones that benefit the most from having teachers close to them. But this is a problem either physically in the classroom or online, right? This is the same problem for everyone, our number of students and our number of teachers. So what if we had online technologies that could increase this ratio, having more teachers for less students, so that the students have a better attention from their professors? Well, online we have the best courses. This is something that Guilherme already told us here, where instead of getting the average professor, the average class, you can get something that is closer to, let's see if I have the mouse here, no. Oh. So you can get something that is above average, and being a single course presented to everyone, you can improve the same course to get it even better. So if I have 15 courses of genetics being taught at biology here, why don't I get only the best one and show the same course to everyone, right? And if it's only one course, it's easier for me to improve it and get the feedback from the students and have a better course. In India, we have a situation where, I don't know if in Brazil it's the same, I would guess it is, but I found no study for Brazil. In India, they did a study of the quality of teachers in public schools. And what they found was that the farthest from the urban centers, the worse the teachers were, by any criteria, by student grades, by student ratings and everything. So what they found was that worse teachers wouldn't find opportunities in urban centers, and they would be the ones that would accept to live farther from the urban centers and teach there. So in India, at least, the farther you are from a big city, the worse your education is going to be. I can't say if it's the same here. I would guess it's the same kind of dynamics, but no, I found no data for a comparison. But once you have one single great course being taught to everyone, everyone has the same chances, or better chances of having the same chances, right? Something else, you can really follow up students closer with online courses. Like I have on Coursera right now, I can stop the video, ask a question, and if the student doesn't know the answer, he will go back to the same video and watch it again. So we don't have this in a classroom. You can stop students to ask questions, you can have them answering, but you don't have an individual student being evaluated all the time to know if he's following what you're presenting. Online, we have this right now. And being a bit more speculative, and I'm not going to say we have to teach with augmented reality, not going to that, but I just wanted to show we are still in the beginning of online courses. We are still trying to reproduce the classroom in our courses. We are still teaching like we teach in the universities. We are not doing the best use of online, such as if I want to teach zoology, I could do a traditional course, presenting figures and saying this and this and this and this, these are the things, or I could do a different course that is aware of the surroundings of the students and uses them to guide the students. So instead of being here in front of the computer, you're going to take your cell phone and go to the aquarium. In the aquarium, we have this kind of fish, this, and this, and then you have a classroom where it's going to be most benefit from. I'm teaching a botany class, so you're not going to stay at home. You're going to go to a park, and you're going to look for this and this kind of trees, this and this kind of shrubs, and you're going to identify them on site. We are not doing this yet. We are teaching at home yet. But it's something that I can't do in my classroom, and I could do it online way easier. So we're still not using online for what it is. We're still trying to reproduce the classroom. There are many opportunities we can have of going outside and actually examining the world with teaching. And just to finish, something to actually worry about. Once we have the best courses online, what do you do with everyone else, right? I have a calculus course on every college, on every place. Once I have the better math course, what do I do with all the other math professors? This is something we don't talk about on online teaching, but it's something that happens on music right now, right? You have Beyoncé, the billionaire of music, and loads and loads and loads of musicians that don't actually sell as much because you have a single competitor, a single winner that takes all. You have the winner takes all dynamics. What will we have once it happens online? What will happen to all those middle school teachers that don't teach the best course? On the other side, and I'm not saying this is actually good or bad, we can have something like this. Well, nowadays, why couldn't you pay for a doctor, for a car, for something? Because it's information intensive and you don't know the offers. Once Uber comes and says, look everyone, this is the baseline price for riding, these are the drivers in your area, you can coordinate it and find out if it works. The same could happen to professors, to teachers, right? You have a math question, right? What's the level of this question? Oh, this is your difficulty. So you want a one-on-one course? Okay, give me your question. I'll find you a teacher in your area, and you're going to have a classroom for this price at this moment, either through your cell phone or physically, presentially, whatever it means. So this is not the future. This is not 20 years from now. This is happening right now, but with other specialties. We are not that far away from it. And the last one, just take a look at what IBM is talking about for customer service. You know those repetitive questions that you have about how your cell phone works or why the bank's offline or how does it work? Well, if you use artificial intelligence, and it's not that high-level artificial intelligence, you can just pull the same questions that people have and present one single good answer for everyone, because it's kind of the same question that everyone has. So what customer service is doing right now is pulling everyone's questions and presenting them with a single answer. So you have to answer it only once. So instead of talking to someone on the phone for hours and hours to find your problem, you first go through the problems, and if it's not one of them, you are going to talk to someone. But usually, it's someone already had the same problem, and you have the answer there. It's kind of the same thing we do with students, right? Have you been to a cursinho? Did you go to have a monitor in the cursinho to take our questions and answer them? I was one of these for a while, and I would answer the same question every day. In chemistry classes, everyone would come with the same problems, with the same questions. Once I answer it, if I answer it once, I have the answer. But I just couldn't present it to everyone at the same time. Now we can. So even though it's a bit speculative, IBM saying we're going to have this by 2020, it's the same exactly problem we have with students nowadays, doing their homework at home. Instead of giving their homework to a professor that's going to give them back in 1 or 2 weeks with their grades, they could have their answer at the moment they're doing it, right? So it's everything here, and even though it's not a teacher, a one-on-one teacher, as everyone would like, this is the cheapest, closest way we can simulate it so that everyone has a better chance. That's it, sir.
Thank you. And now, starting the main part of the event, we have the huge pleasure to announce Professor Barb Oakley that gave us a great lecture today, and is here again to give us nice workshop this morning and this afternoon. And Barb, once again, thank you so much for being with us. Let's give her a round of applause as well.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here again, and we will shortly have everything hooked up. So one thing I wanted to bring up, so Achila brought up an excellent question about what do we do with the other teachers, right, when we go to something that's more online? And that was such a good question, and I think the answer is an important one. There's a huge demand for other teachers. In my experience, the people who can, who are capable of assimilating material online, they're only a smaller percentage, maybe 10% of the total population can be really successful on their own in an online course. But there's probably 60% of students who could be very successful if they had online materials that were coupled with the kinds of in-person training that a real live teacher can provide. So I think there's a really important role for regular face-to-face teachers, and when you complement that with online materials, what that can do is that can build the reach of teachers, so that there's so much of the population that isn't, we can't reach them now with our current materials. And so, there's a huge, huge demand. So let's see, let me just get this up here. So I have to say, that's my husband. He's just hanging around at the South Pole Station. And we're now here. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to divide, I have so much information to share. So first off, in the morning, and a little bit into the afternoon, we're going to talk about how can you make great online materials for massive open online courses. But let's say that you just want something that's for your face-to-face class, that it's just supplementing, you're doing videos that you want to load online just to have available for your students. Perhaps you're flipping your classes. So how do you do that? I mean, you want to make something really cheaply and easily, and I'll give you some tools and ideas for how to do that as well. So just bear with me. I think the Mooc information is really is valuable. It will give you some ideas, but if you're looking for small scale, we've got something here for you today too. Now, just to go over quickly, I think, let's see, it's on, but it's not working. Let's see here. Oh, well. Oh, well, okay. So, so first off, just to quickly cover what is a Mooc. It's a massive open online course, and they're put out by providers like Coursera, maybe 40,000 total students in them, and of course, Learning How to Learn has got over 2 million students now. So so what this means is that if you make a good online course, it can have real impact. Now, what do you want to do as a professor? As a professor, one of the most important things in your life is you want to have impact on your students. And so the sad thing is we haven't had ways to have major impact before. If you're a professor, let's say that you try to reach out to the public. You're not just going to teach your students in your classes, you're going to reach out with a nonfiction book. Well, and a popular book, right? In the US at least, a typical nonfiction popular book sells 2,000 copies over its lifetime, right? So it's really, really hard to reach out to the public. Now, I'll give you a sense. So for me, you may not know this, but when you publish a book, you are not allowed to select the title. The publisher selects the title. So if I had been asked, like, what is the worst possible title that somebody could pick to make your book sound super boring, I probably would have picked the title, A Mind for Numbers, right? So it's kind of a, you know, it doesn't signal that this is going to be a really fascinating read, right? And so this book, I wrote it. It came out in 2014. So remember, a typical book sells around 2,000 copies. Well, so I go, and here I am. This is in New York, and I'm with the guy in the middle is this very famous newscaster named Ira Flato, and I was asked to be on his show. So it's like the show has 2 million followers, called Science Friday. It's a big show. So I'm asked to be on it. It's in New York City. I'm just totally nervous, right? And I go there, and it turns out that this New York Times reporter named Ben Carey also had a book on learning come out at the same time as my book. And so, here I'm on this huge radio show with this New York Times reporter. And I get there, and I'm talking to him, and I'm feeling all, because who am I? Nobody knows me or anything. And so we get to talking, and I'm like, yeah, I have this online course. Yeah, it's kind of big. It's really starting to get big. I mean, at that time, we had maybe 500,000 or something. And he's sitting there listening to me, and I can tell after a while, it's like, I thought I was nervous of him, but he's actually nervous of me, right? He's a New York Times reporter, and it turns out I've got this online course. My book has outsold his, incredibly. We've sold well over 250,000 so far, which is really good sales compared to, 2,000 copies for a regular book. Why has the book been so popular? Because there's an online course that kind of helps people see the material and walk right through it in a very easy way. Your teacher is right there with you. So you may think, well, that's easy for you to say. You're just some kind of brilliant genius, and you accidentally, you've got this really good subject matter for the course. Well, it is really good. But remember, I am not in School of Education. I'm an engineer. I'm reaching into a field that's completely different, and it was a field that someone really needed to do something in. And also, even if you have a subject matter that has very limited number of people who might be interested in it, within that pool, you become the star. Because it's hard to make an online course, and if you make a good one, you are definitely going to be a star. So who was it? So Cassia here was saying the other day that she made a course. She was helping to teach this course, and just walking along, the students would see her here, and it was like, could I have your autograph? And it's kind of it's a great thing when you can have impact as a professor on a lot of people's lives. So for me, even I can go, and actually this can happen if you do a Mooc. You can go anywhere in the world. You could probably send out an email and have a meetup there, and there will be people who will want to meet you there. So for you, even if it's mostly in Portuguese, anywhere in Brazil, people will be interested to meet you. So here I am in Silicon Valley, so I had to go there. So Coursera said, well, do a meetup. And I was super nervous, of course, as always. I'm like, nobody will come. Coursera will come, and then nobody will be there. Well, 45 people show up. And so, there's a lot of people who can get interested in what you're doing, and you can, again, have real impact. So what we're going to cover this morning is, and into the afternoon a little bit, is what have universities been missing about how they reach out to people and what they teach? Why do MOOCs matter? How can universities up their game? In other words, how can you do better education? And I'm talking real, not just sort of hypotheticals. And of course, we have to get to specific tips. How do you create really good videos? How do you, as a professor, present yourself in a good way? So in the afternoon, as I mentioned, what we'll do is a kind of a quick and easy guide to how to make super cheap, super easy videos, and that'll be fun. And hopefully, if we have time, we'll do a bit of a workshop so you can get introduced to the ideas of Camtasia. So a nice thing about a MOOC is this. It's sort of like having your own educational television show with endless reruns. And the only investment that you have is the startup time, and probably your university has an investment in the studio. The biggest mistake that universities make is they're used to having students in cages. So in other words, they're trapped in the classroom in front of you. You don't have to be funny. You don't have to be interesting. You don't have to be anything. You just have to be there, and they get credit from you, right? So it's really, it is not a very good way to incentivize good teaching. Also, universities tend to think that the entire universe consists of pretty much 18 to 24-year-old students. And the reality is the population is much, much bigger. This is the population who is interested in learning. And this is the population that online providers and universities should be targeting. But when this is what is surprising for a lot of universities is they'll be like, we made this MOOC, and you know, people who were older were interested in what we were teaching. It wasn't just the young group. Well, that's because there's a huge, huge opportunity for retraining older people. They're interested in this kind of thing. So Coursera, of course, has recently announced a funding round of $64 million. That puts their total valuation of around $800 million. They're close to unicorn territory, so $1 billion in value. There's big money in these kinds of online materials. And you may think as a university, that's bad. Well, that means we shouldn't be affiliated with it because it's big money. The reason the big money is there is because people want it. So that's why we want to be affiliated with this kind of thing. Money follows people's interests. We want to follow people's interests. Now, MOOCs have grown a lot over the last years. This shows 4,000. Actually, now in 2017, we're already at 7,000 MOOCs available. So MOOCs are really growing in population or popularity. I just want to give you a quick sweeping overview, just in case you're not familiar with the MOOC landscape. In the English-speaking world, we have 4 major MOOC providers. That's Coursera. A couple months ago when I put this up, they had 27 million users, but they're adding around 500,000 users a month. So they're probably around 30 million now. They're aiming at 200 million worldwide. They've got about 2,000 MOOCs, 150 partner institutions, and edX, by contrast, 12 million users. FutureLearn, 7 million. Udacity, 2 million. And just to give there's ShuiTangX in China is one of the largest platforms, that's 7 million. And of course, there's many different language communities, Portuguese, Spanish, Myriada X, and so forth. So what are the next steps for MOOCs? It's a little bit what Achille was alluding to. For years, they've been saying, ever since MOOCs were first started, we're not going to do it for college credit, right? It's just supplemental and so forth. So the next step for MOOCs is college credit. So it started to just getting started in the US, but once we get it, that will be a very dominant force. In China, you can take MOOCs for college credit anywhere in China, and it's a much more centralized market, and it's a very interesting market. In fact, I'm kind of affiliated because Learning How to Learn is going up through 4 of the top Chinese providers. It looks like that's what's going to be happening. So just as a little side note, here's Class Central, and you can see right there, there's Class Central is the name of this provider, and they are a great way to look for the best MOOCs. And this kind of thing where you can look at where the best MOOCs are out there is because, like it or not, MOOCs and other online learning are your competition, right? So to cover just a little bit of some of the kind of things that Achille was talking about, but a slightly different perspective, we often hear online learning is really bad, right? And part of that is because it has low completion rates. So just another perspective, besides the great points that Achille brought up, I would, have you ever thought about how many people actually complete a textbook? I mean, they, do the problems, do every chapter in it. Nobody ever completes a textbook. They don't even really get halfway through the textbook. Well, nobody says we shouldn't have textbooks because there's low completion rates of textbooks. It's an artifact of the fact that we have data for MOOCs where we don't have data for textbook completion. So don't let that fool you. Of course, it reaches professionals, they'll say. It doesn't reach disadvantaged students. Well, learning how to learn is taught, for example, in the Dabob refugee camp, one of the biggest refugee camps in the world. So MOOCs can provide a great way of outreach, to some of those most in need. And as I mentioned yesterday, there are students with IQs of 70 and below who are taking learning how to learned how to learn effectively, and now rather than being institutionalized, they are actually attending college. So MOOCs can do a lot to reach out, I think, to the most disadvantaged and give them the kinds of tools they really need to move ahead. So, of course, they often say it isn't as good as face-to-face teaching, but again, I do like to reiterate the kinds of ideas that Guilherme was bringing up before. Half of all teachers are below average. And so that means that you can have some really good teachers, and you can give a course. Each lecture you give can be the best lecture you've ever given in your life. And that's something you just can't do when you're just teaching a day-by-day face-to-face class. So again, a good MOOC is a mixture of academia with Silicon Valley, with a little bit of Hollywood, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, Hollywood gets you gripped in. It really wraps you in emotionally so that you are enjoying what you're doing. And so MOOCs give you a strategy for doing that. So, I'll talk about some of the specifics along these lines, and we'll have a homegrown example from Samantha of some of the great ideas that can be done with MOOCs. I want to bring up, so this shows basketball. This was a basketball game from the 1950s. There's a very tall guy named Wilt Chamberlain, very famous in the US. And one thing that they noticed was in the 1950s, all of a sudden, basketball got really a lot better all over the world. Why? Well, and especially in the US, it was because television came out. And with television, all of a sudden, you didn't have to go to a game in order to see a world-class player. You could actually see them in your living room. Now, with MOOCs, we are seeing that you can watch some of the world's best teachers on your subject, and that can help you to improve your game as a teacher. And you also want to be aware that students can go and look at these great teachers too. So it really is important for you to see what's going on out there so you can up your game, improve your own teaching so the students are the beneficiary. Now, what is our biggest challenge? Well, let's see, you all know a cemetery, right? So they sometimes say that moving a university is like moving a cemetery. You cannot expect any help from the inhabitants. So what I believe is true is that there are exceptional institutions that make change easier. And that is one of the university here at Sao Paulo is one of those institutions. So you're really lucky to be privileged to work with this visionary group that is trying to really make effective change that can truly help others. So let's first talk about how do you not make a great MOOC? Okay, so here's how you don't do it. So this is MIT OpenCourseWare, which was a great start to just trying to get online, get materials online. And what they did was they just videotaped professors in classrooms with their, you can see his back is mostly to the students, and he's just teaching away. And it's really boring. And part of the reason it's boring is because when I'm in here speaking with you, I'm looking at you. You know I'm engaging with you. So even if it's kind of boring what I'm talking about, I can still sit there. Hey, you're in the back there. You know, you've got some laptop. You know I could call on you, right? And I'm interacting. But if the camera is over here and it's filming me, I'm not talking to the camera. And it's a little bit, it's disengaged. And that's part of why it's so boring. It's like, well, they're all there. They're part of the party, but I'm not in the party. And so you feel disconnected. So then universities thought, we know this is really boring. We're going to fix this. We're going to make it really good, right? We're going to have our professor go up there, and then we're going to have these bullet points come up. Wow. It's like still totally boring, right? Because it's a professor and bullet points, or maybe they'll have, so it's a death by bullets, right? Or maybe there's, let's put in a picture, right? So here we have the professor, and then we have a picture, and they're very disconnected from one another. This is not how you want to make good, engaging MOOCs. There's another thing you can do. There's the bookcase in the background syndrome. So if I just had a nickel for every professor who's come up and said, I'm planning this course, and I'm going to do it in my office. I'll have books behind me, so I'll look a little different, right? So you don't want to do this. You want to avoid this kind of thing. So what I'm going to share with you now is a personal snapshot of methods for great MOOC making. And this is just my own personal kind of set of ideas. You can use them, not use them, but hopefully they will spark some ideas for you. There are many, many other ideas. The one thing that is important is that pre-planning will pay off. So, but I'll talk about how to do some of that pre-planning. So behind a great MOOC, first of all, it's kind of obvious stuff. You want cheerful, friendly instructors. You would not believe, let's see, like when you first meet someone, if you send out friend signals, or you don't. What's a friend signal? A friend signal is you go up, you meet someone, and you kind of do a little bit of an eyebrow flash, and that signals, I like you. I haven't even met you, but I like you. And you send signals with your face. Well, a lot of college professors are, unfortunately, very introverted. So what this means is that when they meet someone, they send out faux signals. You're my enemy, stay away, right? Because you're introverted and you really don't. So what are these kind of enemy signals are kind of, you're going like this a little bit. You're not signaling friendliness. So you can fake it though. If you're an introvert, you can totally learn to send out these sort of friendly signals where your eyebrow flashing and doing these kinds of things that seem like you're more friendly, even if you're totally shy and the camera is super scary. So you want to have cheerful, friendly instructors, or at least people who can fake being that way. You want to have a lot of metaphor and imagery. I'll give you examples of that kind of thing. The video editing is critical, and so we'll talk a lot about video editing. Humor, of course, is a big deal, and we'll talk about humor and how to incorporate it. So we know that about 6 minutes is a good length. 5 to 6 minutes is a good length for a Mooc clip. Now, I will give you a little bit of, let's say that you're teaching advanced genetics, and it's a graduate level course or something that's in 3rd or 4th year of university. The thing about making 6 minute long clips is it's really hard to do. I think it was Pascal who wrote a letter to a friend once and apologized, saying, "I'm so sorry that the letter is so long. I didn't have the time to make it short." And it's really hard to make really short clips. So for MOOCs, it's good, if you can, to have shorter clips, and especially introductory courses, you should be able to do that. More advanced courses, yeah, I think you can get away with some longer things because people are expecting you to have to take time to develop those kinds of advanced materials. Likewise, later on this afternoon, when we're talking about the homemade materials for your in-class presentations or videos, sometimes it's just easier to make longer videos because you just don't have time. If you're making something for your class on statistics and probability, you want to take the time to make a presentation about a specific derivation, and you can't necessarily find 6 minute ways to do that. So good MOOC making often takes some information from the advertising industry. And I think it's important to realize that the academics tend to be a little snobbish about advertising, unless that happens to be their discipline and they're teaching business, right? But advertising, there's a lot of good research behind it, and good advertising, let's say you're trying to sell a pharmaceutical. Well, people will spend weeks to develop just the right metaphor to communicate why this drug is effective in a very short time frame, so you really grab it. What if we were to do that same kind of thing with all of our topics that we're teaching? That we took that time to compress it, to give something that quickly brought them on board. That kind of thing is possible now, but for us to be doing in our MOOCs. And I think we need to be looking a little bit to advertising just to see how effectively they convey information. Now, one thing they do is about every 6 seconds or so, if you watch advertisements, you'll see something is changing on the screen. If there's 2 ways that we have attention. Attention can be top down. Top down is I'm sitting here and I'm a little bored by the professor, and wow, you know, the window looks so much more interesting. And then I bring my attention back. So that's top down, is I am consciously bringing my attention back. Bottom up is, you know, I hear a noise. Something attracts my attention. Maybe on the screen, maybe a little whoosh or some kind of sound or some motion, something unexpected. That is bottom up. It brings my attention whether I like it or not. And so what we want to do is we want to, as much as possible, in our videos, get this bottom-up kind of approach. Little things that attract people's attention, whether they like it or not, and that's what keeps them riveted on the screen and not being bored. What makes them bored is when they have to do top-down attention to bring their attention back. So the more you can use these little tricks for bottom-up bringing of attention, the less tired your students will be with the material. Now, one thing I want to bring up is the idea that talking and moving your hands does not count as motion in a video. So if you have a talking head in a corner or a side of the video, it's not really connecting with the material, and it's also, after a while, it gets really boring, and so then they start looking out the window or looking at something else because nothing is changing. So, so hopefully, I am hoping that we have sound. Let us see. Come on. And there's no sound, and sound is absolutely critical. So, is there a way we can get, let's see, let me just double check. I'm hoping that it's me. No, it's not me. Okay. Come on. What's that? Oh, this is a crashed plane at the South Pole Station. So, so there is nothing to do at the South Pole Station in Antarctica. So we would just go do things like, hey, let's go look at the crashed plane. And so here's Phil just hanging around with the crashed plane. So that was kind of a fun thing. And so let's see, I'm gonna try to give you a little bit, let's see if we can jump ahead to some other things. Any luck? What's that? It's not muted. Nope. Because there's no sound. And that's like critical for a lot of stuff that I'm gonna do. Yeah, that would be good. Okay, so we're going to have a tiny little break here, unless you have some questions so far. Does anyone have any questions yet? Lunch is going to be delayed by 2.5 hours because of the delay. No. I think that we'll have lunch at noon. So about a half an hour from now, we'll have lunch. And let's see, so other questions? Any other questions? Yes. Oh, well, so he is asking about Coursera and younger audiences and possibly a MOOC that I'm developing or planning for younger audiences, which is a question that is near and dear to my heart. So in the US, we have a law called COPA, and I'm not exactly sure what it stands for, but it's something like child protection. So that means that any child that is below age 13 has to, that provider has to do special stuff to have material put on their networks. So in other words, things like, or a provider like Khan Academy has gotten COPA certification, so they're allowed to put material for children on their platform. But Coursera has not gotten that kind of certification. So that means that anything that I might want to do for kids unfortunately, I can't do through Coursera, at least in the United States, probably worldwide through Coursera. So, so that's a challenge for me. A big thing that the ideas that I talked about yesterday in learning how to learn are, did you see? I mean, they're so easy. They're so simple. Kids can understand them. And so, again, because of the visionary nature of the administration here at the University of Sao Paulo, we're working towards and looking towards the possibility of creating videos for kids with these kinds of ideas. We can teach things like the Pomodoro technique. We can teach focused and diffuse thinking and how to create chunks. And we can do it in a really fun way. So I'm so excited about this. And the great thing is that we can make these materials available completely for free to kids all over Brazil with a Brazilian star, not me, but a native Brazilian Portuguese speaker. And I think that would just be so fun, really awesome. More questions? Yes. Okay, so learn creative learning from MIT. And it's funny, sometimes children will say, I can't do these, I can't create metaphors like you can because you're all grown up and you're a professor and all this stuff. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Look, you're 9 years old. You could create way more funny and visual and, creative metaphors than I can. And then when kids hear that, they kind of go, well, yeah, that's true. so yeah. More questions? Yes. For Khan Academy, I love Khan Academy. I think that their videos can be highly effective. Sometimes there is criticism of Khan Academy because in the United States we have a school of thought called Constructivism. And Constructivism, with this approach, it is thought that you must create all learning within yourself. And that is absolutely true. I mean, you have to grow those neural mechanisms, right? But we can't all be Newton or Einstein. It's hard to come up with really, the more advanced you get, the more difficult it can be to have a constructivist approach. And this is why typically in engineering or advanced mathematics or these kinds of things, you see how someone solved the problem. You might get a presentation with that. You use that like training wheels on a bicycle to get your mind going along those tracks, and then that can make it more easy for you to learn. What Khan Academy does is it provides those like training wheels on a bicycle. Here's how you do it, taught by someone who's a master teacher. Often, I really like Sal Khan. Here's a little thing I sometimes do when I'm teaching statistics or probability. I will go to look at his derivations because he has really some very clever approaches that make things seem very intuitive. And I think one of the best things we can do as instructors, oftentimes, is to steal the best ideas from other good teachers, because it's really hard to come up with good teaching techniques all on your own. So yeah, I'm a big fan of them. Yes? Oh, that's another really good question. The nice news is there is no such thing as being too late. Whenever that country, all it takes is some local entrepreneurs to get things going. If there's nothing going yet, wow, that means there's room for you to get something started there. So I know that there are people working in some of the former
How do green screens
satellite
work?
countries.
Well, I
Oh,
just,
oh my goodness, we're there. Oh, this is so exciting. But everywhere I go in the world, people will always say, you know, in our country, we're a little behind the U.S. Oh, don't worry about that. The U.S. is actually really behind. I mean, there's a couple of good institutions. Most institutions, they're really far behind. So that just means there's opportunity for you, and that is a really good thing. Okay, so here we go. Now, what I'm going to do with this particular video is I'm going to show you, and then Samantha will be next. Okay, so now I've got her heart pounding here. But what this video is going to do, it's going to show you a little bit of an intro, which is McMaster University did the video editing of this particular video. But it shows the intro, then it cuts right to my basement, and you'll see how the whole green screen effect can work. So here we go. I hope. Come on. Ah. Let's try resume slideshow. No. Huh.
looking behind the scenes at our basement and at the scripting and editing process actually gives you a sense of what's going on behind the scenes in a fair bit of online learning, so you can make better decisions about what works for you. You can see the green screen here. It's just a cheap cloth hung on a frame that we bought online. You can see the rest of the basement around me. There's the teleprompter hood, the edges of the lights here, and there's the fireplace and the edges of the room. How do green screens work? Well, I just stand in front of it like this. Then we crop using a video editing program to get rid of the stuff on the edges. Then we stick whatever background we want behind me, just like the weather person at your local TV station. I can be in the jungle or in the city. We can even just stick in an animation from PowerPoint. This is all a pretty straightforward process, although trust me, just like anyone, when I first tried to do it, I had my share of frustrations. Notice the infinite effect that we simulated by just draping the cloth gently forward. You might be surprised to learn that even top-notch Mooc making facilities that I've toured around the world often don't have a full-length green screen. Why might a full-length green screen be important? Because from an evolutionary perspective, things that suddenly loom closer to you were more likely to kill you. So motion that appears to jump closer, as when you go from full body to half body on video, activates all sorts of neural attentional layers. Motion of all types, especially unexpected motion, really attracts attention.
So that gives you just a quick little sense of the kinds of things if you're using green screen. And I'm going to show you a later technique where if you're not using green screen, you can still take advantage of some of these techniques. But I want to introduce now Samantha Mazzaro, and she and I met earlier this year, I think it was, at Coursera, and they were planning to do a MOOC, and they were very nervous about it at the time. And I said, don't worry, you're a total natural of a star. And so she is, and she's going to show some of the great star quality that she has that will, I think, give you some great ideas. Let's see.
Hi guys, just to give you a context, me and my partner here, he's Batman, and I prefer to be Batgirl. So we have a chance to meet Professor Barbara, and I'm a little shaky now, sorry for that. I was not expecting to make that off. I just showed this morning some videos that we shoot. Thanks for her guiding us to how to think on engaging videos. So trust us, it's so much hard to develop engaging video. You know, we know the content. We are already professors so long, but design a course and put the content in engaging way is is a little hard to think. So thanks for Barbara. We took serious the idea from Silicon Valley, Hollywood, and content. So we put all together, and this is the.
I'm not sure we have sound.
This is a course.
Hello, my Jedi. I'm proud of you. So many people fell during this first step of our journey because the enemy, the dark side of the Force represented by laziness, lack of discipline, perseverance, and the eternal excuse of lack of time. But not you. You are there, receiving this message. You have the Force inside you. Don't let it die. Do not give up on your mission. Go until the end to become a Master Sales Jedi. I trust you. See you at the end of this course when the Jedi tribe begin. May the Force be with you.
This is just to engage the learners to keep going to the end of the course, because it's a 5-month specialization, so it's too long. So this is a kind of small prize, and we took different characters such as Big Bang Theory. We wrote entire courses using Big Bang Theory idea. He is Sheldon, I am Amy. And we do something like Blues Brothers, and we are completely open to share, because we believe that working with MOOCs is about sharing. So share with each other our learning process, learning curve, and especially what we have learned from Professor Barb. So if we are completely open during the breaks and lunchtime to exchange some ideas and grow this trend here in Brazil together.
Thank you so much. So this shows some of the brilliant talent that you have already here. I mean, these are terrific ideas that are much better than what I would have thought to do. So, there's the homegrown talent here is amazing, and it's really lucky to be even a small part of it. So let's see. Let's hope we can get back up here. Okay, so just a few tips when you're using green screen. If you happen to be doing it and you happen to want to do it at your house, which is actually, by the way, totally simple to do, you can get a green cloth, drape it behind you, and then set the camera. Don't put the camera on automatic settings, adjust it manually. The best thing to do is to focus on the corners of the eye, because that gives you a sharp line. Well, at least if the person is a little older like me, right? So use that to focus, and then always you'll need to readjust every time you step away from the camera because you'll lose focus very quickly. You want to use a shutter speed of around 1/80th or so in order to prevent blurring. So if you have green screen and you're going like this with your hands and you don't have it on a fast setting, it will show a little green between your fingers. You often, in a typical studio, you have 3 lights. In a green screen studio, you want to get 4 lights. So you have a little brighter to make up for the fact that you've got this fast shutter speed. Another little tip is notice here in the lavalier, see that little loop right there? You always want to make sure that you've got a loop in your microphone. And the reason for that is it serves as a spring so that the mechanical sound will not transduce up into your, to show on the actual video that you get coming out. If you check the sound on the first videos of Learning How to Learn, it has this kind of little funny scratchy sound, and it's because we didn't know to do, to make that little loop. So you can get ahead of us by just following that one simple trick. I want to give you a sense of how someone else is editing a video that is not using green screen. So this is Nelson Dulles. He's the 4-time US memory champion, and he is a friend of mine. He's a natural with video making. He used a 10 to 22 millimeter Canon lens that was super wide angle, so it gives kind of a little bit of a different appearance to how he looks. Now, when you watch what he's doing, there's a lot of things to notice. He has really good intro music that draws you right in. And so I'll show you a little later here what some of the good websites are to get free or low-cost intro music and music for your videos. But also, you'll notice something else, and this is very important. This is frequently done in YouTube. In YouTube, here's how we do it as professors. Professor speaks, right? And we never cut the professor off, right? We may have the professor, and then we may have a little jump to cut something out where they made a mistake. But we're very logical in how we do it, very structured, it has a seamless flow. In YouTube, it's like cut, cut, cut. So and you may have the person there, and then suddenly it cuts and you're closer. And it gives this sense of breathlessness, like things are moving really rapidly. And so Nelson does a little of this on this video. We'll just watch some of the first part of it. Notice the humor. What he's doing is he's teaching about how to remember things. And if a typical university professor taught about how to remember things, they'd say, and here's the literature, and it actually shows that the default mode network is expanded by blah, blah, blah. But he's getting right to it and very quickly. Oops.
Hello again, welcome. My name is Nelson, and in this video, we are going to talk about how to memorize a grocery list, something that we have to do every day, almost every day, at least some type of list we have to memorize every day, and a grocery list is one of those items. So to memorize a list of things, we can use different techniques, but the best one, the one that memory champions use in competition to do these crazy things, is called the memory palace. But first, we need to decide what our list is.
I love how he does this. He'll get all the way through, and then he'll forget. And then he'll, okay, oh, what was that? A little bit of humor,
now,
right?
You could just memorize the list by going through all these items.
So that gives you a little sense. Notice all the really neat tricks he did. He normally, as professors, we would start, and we're there. We're sitting there. We're looking straight at the screen. He starts off camera, comes in, is not looking at the camera, sits down, and then begins and waves his hands expansively. So that is much more like real life, because in real life, we don't walk right up, we don't start by staring at someone, right? And we also make this mistake of when we're videotaping, we're always looking directly at the camera. In real life, you would look at someone and you look away a little bit, because if you're always looking at someone, it's kind of like, you know, they're the lion and you're the prey, right? And so you want to have these kind of things where you're looking at the camera, but then you're looking off, you're thinking about something, and you're not looking directly at the camera all the time. Another little trick is this. Sometimes when two professors are together, you might be reading from a teleprompter. If you are, the other person, let's say the other person's reading from the teleprompter. So you're sitting there, and you're, you know, they're reading away, and you're reading along with them. Well, your eyes are going like this. So you're not saying anything, but you're just looking really shifty-eyed in front of you while your friend is speaking, right? So what you want to be doing is you want to be looking at your colleague, looking at the camera, but not sitting there and reading. And when your colleague says something really good, you want to be saying something or doing something like, was that good? Yeah. You know, that kind of thing that's supportive of your colleague and what your colleague is doing. Another trick is this. So we'll talk about teleprompters more later on, because there can be big advantages. A lot of people who don't have to get up in front of the camera themselves will tell you, don't do a teleprompter. It makes things more difficult. And actually, that's not true at all. I would say that 1 in 5 people does not need a teleprompter. They can sit down, they can nail it, right? They just go in front and they're naturals. The other 4 think they can do it without a teleprompter. And they sit down and they're and they're and they're not very natural and so forth. And so it can be really, if you're one of those naturals and you're sure you're one of those naturals, then it's okay to go without a teleprompter. But a teleprompter otherwise can make it a lot easier. So a trick when you're using a teleprompter is look at the camera lens itself, not the words on the screen. Do not focus on them. And you'll say, well, how do I see the words on the screen? You'll see, it comes in through your peripheral vision, but if you look at the camera, which is several inches behind the teleprompter, then you won't be looking a little bit cross-eyed because you'll actually be focusing on the camera, which is where you should be focusing. And you'll catch all of the text through your peripheral vision. So that's a little trick to kind of help you when you are in front of a teleprompter. Now, humor is incredibly important. One of our biggest mistakes that we make when we're teaching online is we think that we should be, well, thousands of people could be looking at us. We should be on our very best behavior. And that's not, that gives the worst of materials. You want to give yourself permission to be a little silly, to be funny. So, and even just to be a bit goofy. So, for example, here is my colleague teaching, learning how to learn. So Terry Sanowski is one of only 10 living human beings to be simultaneously a member of all 3 top national academies. And what he's just done is he's given a 5-minute, very serious lecture on neurotransmitters, and then watch what he does next. Oh, why have we suddenly lost sound? Okay, we're about as, so he says, which brings us to zombies. Zombies
can't learn. It is also clear from their behavior that they have brain damage, especially in the front of their cortex, which is the part that makes plans.
So what has this guy done? He has just come off the pedestal of being the formal professor, and he's just making some fun. And that's the kind of thing you want to do too. Let's say that you're a professor Engineering, for example, you're saying, my subject matter is too serious for this kind of thing. I'm not going to be doing it. Well, your students are missing out because you can have so much fun. I used to, when I taught electrical circuits, I'd have, you know, gangs coming up. There's the electrons from this side and the electrons from this side and the two warring gangs. Who's going to win? You can have lots and lots of fun with, if you're teaching entropy, you can teach entropy by using a 5-year-old birthday party versus an 80-year-old birthday party. You take a 5-year-old, take an 80-year-old, put him in the 5-year-old birthday party. Does it increase entropy? Disorder? No. An 80-year-old just comes over there and creaks over. Now you take a 5-year-old and put him in the 80-year-old birthday party. Do they increase the disorder, the entropy? Like a lot. Like they're bouncing around, doing all this stuff. This is a way you can easily communicate ideas of entropy, which are very complex and very difficult. So using these simple metaphors that lend themselves to pictures are great ways to teach, even in very difficult and abstract engineering and mathematical and technology types of topics. You don't have to make everything funny. What you want to do is this. So humor is kind of like a drug. It really does release dopamine. So what people are looking for is that random tiny bit of humor. So they will watch all sorts of things. If they think that every once in a while there's going to be something funny, they'll go through all the other stuff, just waiting for that funny stuff, and then they'll get their dopamine hit of pleasure. So if you just plan in a little bit of humor every once in a while, they will love it. Now, I do have to admit that when I was making a Mooc, right, I had a secret weapon. And, okay, you may not have had this secret weapon, but this weapon is my husband. He was the man behind the camera. So you can see him there going, okay, quit with the diva stuff. It's time for lunch now. Let's get this wrapped. And speaking of which, I think we are getting very close to lunch. So, let's see. So, Paulo, should we break for lunch now, or should we go another few minutes? Just a bit more? Okay. Sorry. I know you're salivating, right? So this brings me of the idea, should we teleprompt or not? And I think it does depend a lot on the professor, and as I mentioned earlier, some professors think they can do it, but they really cannot. So I would say probably 2/3 or more of professors can benefit from using a teleprompter. I think the biggest resistance is that people think, well, I'll just wing it because it's faster. I just have to go there and suffer through the studio, and I don't have to actually write something down. Well, true, you can wing it. You can wing anything. And the quality really, really suffers. Because if you're just throwing something together, it's going to show that way. Every second counts when you're doing something that's available for massive amounts of people to look at it. And so that's why a teleprompter can be so important. A big problem that I think people have when they say they can't use a teleprompter very well is they get these little tiny iPads or something, and then they're holding it away, and I would be like, now what's that say, right? So what we have is a 24-inch on the diagonal teleprompter. It makes things so much easier. We can have it like 17 feet away from me, so what would that be? Something like 5 meters or something, and it's far away, but I can see it very clearly. And I've noticed that if I have a smaller teleprompter, I will mess up a lot. If I have a bigger one, I don't mess up as often at all. Now, and there's ways to handle messing up, and I'll cover that in just a minute here. So we use a 4K camera. If you have something like a 2K camera, it means that if you're filming full body, you have to film one time with the script, and then you have to film again half body, because if you try to take a full body and close it up to half body with a 2K camera, it'll get all pixelated. So, so 4K camera, if you can start with that, is great. 8K is, you are another competitor. Again, so Guillermo was saying that some of the competitors are things like Facebook and so forth. Those are distractors. But a real competitor is YouTube and some of the other online providers that are of that sort. And YouTube is working, they have directly targeted television. They want to compete against it. So the way they're doing that is encouraging local stars to come up with creative videos that people want to watch. And one thing they're doing to encourage this is any YouTube star that has 10,000, and Achille, you can correct me on this. This is, I visited a studio in New York that was a YouTube studio. They have, from what I understand, around 20 studios around the world. If you have 10,000 or more followers, you can get access to this studio. You can get the use of a $50,000 camera, 8K camera, for free, and you can also get access to studios, tutorials, all sorts of great things. This is ordinary people. So universities often make the mistake of thinking, well, we got this. You know, we're universities, we've got the gravitas. We don't need to pay attention to what's going on in the real world, but we actually do. We need to start bringing in some of these really creative editing tricks and approaches that are being used in YouTube. Otherwise, we risk being seen as being obsolete and out of touch. So this stuff is really not hard. The more control you have as a professor, the better the product, and the more the learner interest in it. So just because, I should point out, there was a university in Texas that paid $2 million to have 8 MOOCs produced, and 300 people watched it over 2 years. Why? You look at them, they're beautiful. And the professors get up there and they teach, and they were totally boring. Nobody used some of these great attention-grabbing techniques. And they were like, hey, look, we got $500,000 to make this MOOC, so we're going to have video montages with scenes of the campus and this and that. Nobody cares about that kind of stuff. They actually care if it's personal and gets right to the point. And this is the kind of thing that you can creatively do, which I'll give you some more tips about this. And so here's an example video of how I want you to start thinking about the fact that if you're being filmed, it's not just you looking at the camera. There's all sorts of ways that you can interact with the material. So here's an interaction.
The 3 neuromodulatory systems based on serotonin, noradrenaline, and dopamine help form the emotional systems of the brain. These systems, in turn, help us to form social bonds, evaluate dangerous situations, and learn new skills.
So that's just a little sort of vignette. But you don't want to always just be looking at the camera, right? You want to show that there's some interaction of you with the material. Here's another example of that kind of thing. So here, I wanted to show a part of the brain that, the Wernicke area, that has to do with our hearing and understanding of verbal sorts of things. And I could have done this and said, I mean, the whole point here is that music, and listening to music that has words in it, can interfere with the part of your brain that might already be studying and using that part of the brain. So I wanted to bring up part of the anatomy and say, look, don't listen to music with words, because it can interfere with your brain's processing of other material when you're studying that involves words. Now, watch how I did this to make it funny.
Here's what we do know. If the music is fast and loud, it disrupts reading comprehension in part because you use some of the same areas of the brain to process music as you do to process language.
So there's this creepy head that comes up, and I'm like, ooh, that's really creepy. I'm interacting. It's not just me standing there. And that's the kind of thing that you want to be doing. You also want to anticipate a really well-planned course integrates in things that are coming up. So here, I have in-video quizzes in the Mooc. So I don't just sit there and go, stick that in-video quiz in. I've planned it out. And here, I'm like, oh my gosh, here comes the in-video quiz, you'll see.
Only when you close the book or turn away from the video and test yourself by seeing if you can do it yourself, do you really know that you know it. Oh no, here comes the fade to white. You know what's coming.
So that's when the in-video quiz appears. So it's not just this kind of thing where everything's disjointed, oh, we stick in an in-video quiz. It's actually organic to what's going on. Here's just a little bit of a discussion forum prompt.
Do you have a favorite book or author whose impact in your learning, the quality of your life, or your understanding of life and your place in it? Head on over to the discussion forum and let us know what you think. And learn as well from the top insights.
So you can see there that I'm telling people, go to the discussion forums. I'm not just assuming they're going to do it. So if you can build that into your course, it will really help. So careful planning is a very important part of everything you're doing with MOOCs. Now, a good idea is to often start a video with a puzzle. So here's an example. Notice I've got this tomato in my hand. So why do I have a tomato in my hand? Here's the start of the video.
Everybody has some issues with procrastination, because if you're working on something, it means you're not working on a lot of other things. But some people have more issues with procrastination than others. In this video, we're going to give you a little insight into procrastination, why it arises, and a powerful little tool to help you address it.
So you can see, sometimes people will tell you, begin with a bullet point list of what you will cover in that video. Don't do that. If you have a 5-minute video, the title alone should be enough for what you're going to be covering. You want to hook them. Remember, part of what you're doing as an instructor is having them fall in love with your material. The more you can tell something that's a little bit, of a hook at the beginning, the more they will love it. And again, this is the kind of thing you can definitely do in science, technology, and engineering and math courses. So I do want to point one thing out, though. It's very typical to think you look bad. So, like, I look at this video and I go, oh, look at that, that's horrible. I hate my outfit. If you look up there, look at my hair. Look, my hair's got this weird little blob in it and stuff. I thought the outfit was kind of cool, and it just ended up looking terrible to me. When you're making MOOCs, or doing videos, it is completely typical to hate how you look. You will find every little tiny thing that's wrong that you could possibly find, and that is totally normal, right? So when you find yourself going, oh, I look terrible, oh, we should refilm that, just forget it. You don't have time to do those kinds of things. And just realize, just start looking at newscasters with the same critical eye that you're looking at yourself with. You'll start noticing, oh, there's a little nervous quiver in that voice there, wasn't there? Their hair's a little funny. And you'll start seeing that all the professionals have all the same problems, that you think you're the only one who has this. So it's okay to think that you look kind of bad. Self-effacing humor is really appreciated. Here's an example of it where I'm just making fun of myself.
Research has shown that if you watch a professor on a video for about 30 seconds, you can get a very good sense of how effective that professor actually is. Amazingly, even as little as 6 seconds can allow you to form an effective snap judgment, in part based on emotional micro-expressions. Research has shown that if
I love that.
research has shown
Oops,
that
it
if you
just,
watch a
sorry about
professor
that.
on a video for about
But you
30
can see,
seconds,
so,
research has shown that if
boy, that just
research
is
has
not,
shown
okay, well, research has shown, yes, okay. But you can see the little drop-down boxes that give the micro-expressions, how I have a furrowed brow and I'm looking really kind of upset about things. So making a little bit of fun of yourself is kind of a fun thing to do. I don't know why learners love it when the professor, you know, isn't all, oh, I am the master of the universe, but they're a little bit, you know, kind of take themselves not so seriously. So what are the differences between in-class and massive online courses? One thing is that in class, we often, the instructor controls the presentation. So what this means is, if it's, let's say it's 6 o'clock in the morning, you're getting up, and at 10 o'clock you have to give this class. And it's a 4-hour class or something like that. So you're frantically reviewing your notes, trying to get everything all together, and that's perfectly okay to do it at the last minute. In fact, I think most of us as professors have done this kind of thing. But in massive open online courses, last-minute preparation is not okay. There's a lot of video editing production work that has got to be done. So you can't just say, my course is supposed to launch next month, I can give you my videos now. It doesn't work that way. The video production team has got other things going on, and also they're just not gonna pay attention to your course if you're just thinking, hey, I can do it at the last minute like I do with my classes. So it's a very different style. It's a team is working to develop this. You want to make sure that you're working with your team. And another thing is, a lot of times we naturally default to the idea that the professor has to be in charge of a class. That works great for in-person classes. This can be a disaster for MOOCs because professors know their material, but they don't know anything about MOOC making. So you want to, you know, when you're creating MOOCs, you don't want to go into that as, I am the total master and I'm the expert. Maybe of your subject matter, but not of how to do the editing and get it all to put together. So the team actually should have someone who's in charge of making things look really, really good. Project management, I like to use Trello. It's a great way for seeing how something is developing. You can see all the different scripts. It's a different color depending on what it is in the production process. So if you've just written a script, it's one color. If you've filmed the script, it's another. If you've edited it, if you've uploaded it, you can develop whatever kind of system you want, and it works really very well. Now, script writing. Let's see, Paulo, how are we doing as, Paulo, how are we doing as far as, this would be a good time. So when we come back from lunch, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just show you a little bit about what a script looks like and how you can expand and contract a script. And so, what time do we come back?
Around an hour 15 maybe?
Just name the time, and that's when we'll be here.
Okay, so does 1:30 sound okay? Perfect. Be back at 1:30 then.
Okay.
I'm not sure.